Thank you, folks. I think a few more people will be joining us, but thank you, Mansi, for that generous introduction. I don't adorn any hat because that will be kind of awkward. I don't sit on a hat, but more importantly, there are 4 vectors that I've actually kind of embarked upon since I actually graduated from IIT. One is basically being a techie. The other one is basically being in exec management. Being a professor, she said, is correct. Being an entrepreneur, 3 times over, and then basically being a VC now, and an angel investor. So I think all of these aspects actually are reflected in Mr. Parthasarathy, whom we will call on board. Please, Partha, come on. So as a quick introduction, there's only 1 year difference between him and I. He's 1 year senior, at least in terms of calendar achievement, but he might be younger than me birthday-wise. So 1 year senior to me in undergrad, did it from BITS, and then after that, IIT Kharagpur, and then much later, I think he went to Harvard, 2010. But in between this, he spent 20 years building a very, very cool company with 8 other founders, from what memory serves me right, called Mindtree. And they were one of the first few services companies which actually took VC investments, I think, in the late 1990s, very, very differentiated, and I think went public in 2007 or 8, from, if my memory serves me right, and then had a lovely journey till 2017 when decided to come off. Of course, meanwhile, he's also a philanthropist. He's actually contributed his time for a lot of health tech ventures. He's also a professional, not quasi-professional, amateur runner. So I used to actually play a lot of cricket. I captained Azharuddin in Hyderabad schools, and I captained. So he's been running a lot. I played a lot of cricket. And so there are a lot of parallels. So we will explore that. And he's recently launched a fund in 2020. Of course, he's not been here, but quality, pedigree, focus on enterprise tech, SaaS, which is what has been my focus also. So there's lots of intersections and parallels. So we'll actually explore that in a casual conversation. So please welcome him. Thank you for making the trip. So Partha, I used to have this cool kind of haircut till 2018, but I had to get it shorn off for health reasons, but welcome. So one of the things I want to ask you is, you started very early, 1985, and you had a little bit of exposure at Wipro, from what I gather. What prompted 7 or 8 of you to just chumma come out and say, okay, I'm going to strike it on my own and build something? Because 7 or 8 is a decent size, but how do you manage that thought process?
Since you talked about my hairstyle, I have to start with my hairstyle, right? And since we talked about VC funding, so when Mindtree was formed and we wanted to raise funding, so we said, what do VCs look for? So VCs look for technologies. So I said, either you should know technology or you should look like a techie. So I took the second option. But coming back to your question, Srikanth, first of all, in 1985, I don't think the word startup was in anybody's conscious mind. So I think that was not an option. So I think joining a Wipro was a startup, because in 1985, Wipro was probably 200 people. But to be fair, I think I had a fantastic ride. I mean, all the technologies that I got involved with. I was in Wipro for 15 years, by the way. It's not a small stint. It was 15 years. But I think to answer the question, why did we decide to come out and start Mindtree, you have to put yourself in the shoes of 1998. That's when Mindtree was conceived. And for some of you who are familiar with the IT services industry, if you look back in 1998, there are broadly 2 kinds of companies which existed in the IT services space. Broadly. I'm a little bit generalizing, but give me that liberty. One kind of services companies were I would call the strong Indian IT services companies. You know, the TCS, the Infosys, Satyam, many of them were there. Now, they had some strengths and weaknesses. I'll talk about that. That's one kind of company which existed. The other kind of companies which existed, because remember, this was the beginning of .com. 98, 99, this was the post-Y2K period. Y2K, everybody knew Y2K is going to end and .com is going to start. Right? There's a lot of companies which started during that period. The examples were Cyient, Viant, Sapient. These are all very high-end consulting companies. right? Now, look at these two companies, two sets of companies. The large Indian IT services companies had significant strengths in the following. One, they knew technology. They knew how to build scale. They knew how to do work, distributed work 10,000 miles away for a customer. These are their big strengths. But one of their biggest weaknesses was that they could never get the role of a trusted advisor to clients. Let's say if I am Bank of America sitting in New York and internet is coming and I want to know what should I do with internet, it's very unlikely they will go to the Indian IT services companies. And that is this white space the other set of companies took over. The Scient, Viant, and Sapient. They said, I know internet, I know your business very well, and I will tell you what to do. So that was their biggest strength. So they had an ability to reach at the highest level within the customer organization to act like a true consultant. But their biggest weakness was very simple. They will only tell you how to do it. They will not do it themselves. Right? The second biggest weakness was they used to charge an arm and a leg to provide that service. Now, this is the broad lay of the land. Our belief when we are sitting inside Wipro and thinking is that if we are able to combine the strength and size and scale and distributed work of the Indian IT services companies, along with the consulting capabilities of these front-end companies, and provide it at affordable cost to customers, it will be a winning proposition. Now, two questions arise. Why do we think we have the capability to deliver on this? Right? And that's where the founding team came in. If you look at the founding team of Mindtree, 5 of us came from Wipro, so we understood this side of the business very well. 3 of us came from a company called Cambridge Technology Partners in the US. We understood the consulting part very well. So that combination is number one. The second thing, the best way to go validate an idea is don't go to a VC and ask, is it a good idea? Because everybody will say it's a good idea. Go to a VC and ask, will you put money? So we went to a VC and asked, this is the idea we are planning to do, will you put money? And that validated our thought process, and that's how Mindtree was born.
Quite interesting that you talk about Cambridge Technology Partners, because John Donovan is a good friend. He also put money in my startup. And this is a very interesting inflection point, because some of the companies which he's talking about, like Scient, Viant, Sapient, and Razorfish, and a couple of others, all kind of came during that period. It's not as though they had outstanding teams, but they were able to actually build that rapport and trust very, very quickly. My journey started very differently, Partha. I basically was a techie. I actually built a product, which someone like Venkat is doing now. And some of the work that I did became a product called ClearCase. I don't know how many of you people know. Some of you might know. Some of the work that I did became part of Remedy's AR server. So basically, we were doing Atlassian 0.0, all DevOps around client-server Java. I had the same issue. They didn't trust me because from Adam, even the VC didn't understand what I was doing. Okay, so I had to actually kind of rely on the older IT companies because they could actually provide me scales. They're already doing this, and they articulated the problem better to the customer, saying that if we had this, we could actually manage it better. So there's a variety of ways things get dotted. So I think thank you, because that balance in the founding team is very important. The other question I want to ask you, but it's easier, I think, in my mind, but like I'll ask you anyway, is having 8 people as founders, was that easy?
Just to clarify, it was not 8 founders, it's 10 founders.
Sorry.
but I think you have to look at pros and cons when you have decisions like this. I think it goes back to why we left Mindtree. Right? We are all happy campers in Wipro. We were doing very well. Everybody was doing very well. There's absolutely no reason to give up all that and come. So we said, if you're going to come up and do something, let's try to build Mount Everest. I'm not here to build an anthill here. So if you build something, let's build a Mount Everest. Otherwise, we'll die trying. But we are not going to be happy if you make a small anthill. Now, the moment you make that as your goal, then you clearly, if you show a mirror to yourself, then you clearly know that you don't have everything in you. It's not possible for 1 or 2 guys to do it. So we said, let's look at people who can bring complementary skills to the table. Right? That is what was the thought process behind having a large founding team, who have very, very diverse set of people, diverse skills. I also believe, we underestimate the power of diversity of thought process. So I think we wanted to have people, otherwise it will be like a Wipro spin-off, right? If 5 of us come together and start, could we have started? Answer is yes. Would we have been as successful as Mindtree was? I'm not so sure, right? The diversity of thought process becomes extremely important. Now, the other question is, was it easy? We knew it's not going to be easy. Was it easy? Answer is no, it was not easy. But one thing which helped us in our favor is that we thought about a lot of conflicts that can potentially come as we go through the journey, even before we started the journey. I'll give 2 or 3 examples. Yesterday, for some small group of people, I was giving this example. One of the things we said was, we had many things. We spent almost 8-10 days, much before Mindtree opened for business, thinking about this and talking about it and having an understanding between all founders that this will be the lay of the land. For example, we said any founder should be comfortable reporting to a non-founder. Now, this is non-trivial. You tell that to any of your startups, it's not going to work. But we said we have to be comfortable with that. Tomorrow, it's possible that you may get somebody who's far more competent than you. You may have to report to that person. We did have many instances of founders reporting to non-founders in our 20-year journey. Second, we said it is not required that all 10 of you have to be involved in every decision making. Clear no. Because a lot of people think, oh, let's assume both of us are founders and you took a decision. Somebody will come and ask me, oh, he took a decision. Oh, you're a founder, you didn't know? And then that shoots up your ego, right? So we said, if let's say somebody is head of sales situated in North America and he decides to take an approach to a geography side or sales side, some decision. I, sitting as an engineering manager in Bangalore, I need not be involved at all. So we said there are certain things in which all founders, everybody has a role to play. If it's part of your role, go take the decision. There are certain things we said all founders have to be involved. Let's assume we are selling the company, we are raising money, we are doing an IPO. These are all common things which affects everybody will be involved. So I'm just giving 2 examples. There are many examples like that we said. But I think to be really honest and truthful, the best thing which helped us to wade through the crisis was we had a Bhishma Pitamaha in our team, which was Ashok Sutta sir, who was the senior most member of our founding team. In the case of serious conflicts, he was the one who sat and resolved issues.
Wonderful. So I'll give you another very anecdotal experience, right? As I was going through my first startup, building some cool stuff, a very interesting thing happened because I was working for HP Labs, came out of HP and started building this product, helping them. At the same time, HCL had a big flop and they had to actually work with HP, and I got involved helping them out a little bit because they had Apollo domain expertise and things like that. So then I ended up meeting Shiv. Then I ended up meeting 6 founders, right? Out of the 6 founders, I could only find passion in 3. And very soon it was obvious 3 of them left. But that was good enough to give me a start and a very, very good kind of partnership, because without HCL, for example, I would not have actually scaled my own company. Going back to his VC question, what I was trying to build, no one could understand. So no one put in money. But what ended up happening is, because of HCL, I could get large contracts. Like Wells Fargo became my first customer. They still were a customer when we sold out. Okay. So I got about 5 or 6 really marquee names. Then the VC started lining up. So it's very, very important. If it's fundable, take the money immediately, or it's at least a litmus test, but do not give up if it is not fundable at that particular point in time, because VCs have a different kind of barometer depending on what their focus is, which stage they come in, and have they been entrepreneurs. It's a very, very critical thing, because I basically think an entrepreneur VC is a very different VC than an MBA VC. So I want to ask you that. I want to lean. So what do you think about that?
No, I think it's a great question. We keep getting asked that question all the time. First of all, I agree with you saying it's different to be an entrepreneur VC. But there are, again, I would say there are lots of positive, but there are blind sides as well. Lots of positives are actually, if you decide to invest in a startup, we can really help them in multiple angles. Not that we know all the answers, but at least they don't have to repeat the same mistake that we have done, right? Number one. And number two is actually most important, to put it very simply. We can act as a sounding board for any type of problem they may face in their journey. And we all know entrepreneurial journeys are difficult journeys. The downside is that As soon as an idea gets presented, in your mind starts racing about and thinking about all the execution problems they will have. Because that's what you would have done in your corporate life. Right? If somebody came up with the idea, first thing is point out 10 things why this will not work. Because you have to execute it, right? That's a downside to it. Sometimes you have to suspend that thinking of saying, is the idea good? Is there a valid problem that they're trying to solve? So we have this constant struggle saying, can we suppress our execution mindset and think about the opportunity space first? Interestingly, we have a very close friend who's based in Singapore who's in the public market space, and they're in a very, very large fund. And he gave us a very brilliant idea. So when they do investing, they have about 5 people. And they have a rule that it has to be consensus. All 5 have to agree. Even if one says no, they don't invest. So he said, many times what happens is, it's a 1-hour meeting after all the papers are circulated, and 55 minutes they'll spend discussing why we should not invest. And 5 minutes they will discuss why we should invest. He said, this is not going to work. He reversed it. 55 minutes people should only say why we should invest. And I'll only give 5 minutes for people to tell me why we should not invest. Sometimes getting that balance right in terms of evaluating the idea and the entrepreneur and the space that they are in, while suspending your execution background that you come from, or operational background, I think is a challenge. But I think in the overall play of things, I think, forget about us, I think it will be beneficial for the startup ecosystem if more operators and entrepreneurs becomes VCs. And they in turn don the hat of helping entrepreneurs.
So I think I totally concur with Partha here, because if you do not have that mix, you actually get judged by very, very different metrics. And at least in the last 4-5 years, I can see it in the slideware that I get presented, because everyone's putting vanity metrics. And once you go down one level and it doesn't seem genuine, they get rejected, because that's what they're pandering to, whether you look at Shark Tank or anything. So there is a lot, especially in the enterprise tech B2B space, it's okay to be slow. It's okay to be kind of at least make sure that everything is measured. You don't have to kind of basically judge yourself with someone else. So I think that's where the entrepreneurial thing helps. But he's absolutely right that you shouldn't become a pseudo founder, because it's very, very tempting. And especially if it's in an area which you love, right? Then you will be there spending a lot of time, but it's also not very, very helpful to the entrepreneur, because as a VC, you should just spend just enough time and guide and maybe help. I mean, get into the lower level. So from a trends perspective, Partha, since you started in 2020, but like prior to that itself, you've been an angel investor and pretty active. What have you noticed, obviously 2020, there was pandemic, but what have you noticed in the resilience of the entrepreneurs? Because you've done at least 15 investments or more. Can you just comment on that?
Before I go there, I just want to add one more point on the previous topic of, entrepreneurs becoming VCs. I think this becomes extremely important in the journey going forward, in my view. When you look at enterprise tech, I'm using the word enterprise tech in a loose sense of the word, broad sense of the word, or even if you look at product companies, hardware, software companies that we think will be the next wave, that's what we are betting on, is that it's extremely important for the VC to understand what you're doing. Let's say, for example, we met a very interesting company in quantum security. Now, quantum security is such a complex subject for even the deepest techie guy to understand. But if the VC doesn't understand, he's going to walk away. And I think we need VCs to understand such complex technologies and, of course, take a few bets on some of them. I think that's another reason why I think going forward also, I think more entrepreneurs turning out, becoming VCs, I think is very, very helpful.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm going back to the trends, because if you look at something like cybersecurity, what's going to happen with 5G, the plethora of information, the proliferation of generative AI, even though I did my PhD in AI, it was very, very small then. Today it's available to all. So you'll see a lot more of this happening. And if you do not have a little bit of technical understanding, you may pass up on some good trends. So what are some of the trends that you've seen which are not kind of affected by a pandemic or up and down, something which is really important for India?
Oh, the one thing, first of all, I should admit that as Mela Ventures, we are rookies in the VC space. But we have been fascinated by the sheer audacity of ideas. And we, on an average, but for the pandemic period, we meet between 2 to 3 companies a week. Um, of course, not all of them we take into a more detailed evaluation, but I think the sheer audacity of the young people who come out of colleges and even come out of working in large companies and coming up with identifying problem statements which are genuine, real, and they'll be paying customers for that. The most important thing is paying customers, right? I think it's just been fascinating. I think from what pandemic has proved to us, if proof was needed, is that most entrepreneurs, I won't say all, most entrepreneurs have the resilience either to persevere with their same idea they started off with, or completely willing to pivot based on how the market has changed. And that we have seen. And I think that's a very, very encouraging trend. Second is actually, what we are also seeing is actually people are coming up with very unusual kind of areas that they do a startup in, which probably was not heard of in the past. For example, one of the startups we have invested in, it's not so much as a tech play, but it will be a tech play, but is actually on cold chain. The reason why I'm saying cold chain is because vaccine transportation highlighted the problem in India during COVID times. Right? And I think then we realize that how poor our cold chain is in the country. And if God forbid, if something tomorrow happens and we need to have a robust cold chain, I think we are in deep trouble. So I think people have sensed what's happening in the economy and identifying white spaces there and picking on it and going after it in a deep way. And I think that's very, very gratifying if you ask me.
True. Actually, some of the things which Partha has pointed out is just COVID. Forget about cold chain. Just COVID pointed out all our logistics weaknesses, period. I'm just talking about even traditional drugs, getting food, everything was disrupted. So it's heartening to see the government as well as some of these techies coming together and doing some really cool stuff. Like, for example, how many of you have heard of locale.ai? Only 1, 2. So they basically give you a horizontal toolkit which maps your route, conveniences, everything, because Google only gives you one perspective, Map My India gives you another perspective, but if you want locale, you'll get a whole bunch of other things which are very vital. And we also realized during COVID, certain ideas which I may have invested, okay, because I'm not a very big D2C, B2C guy and all that. So I liked idli dosa, so I did ID Fresh. It took off, okay, randomly. Don't ask me how. Or Big Basket, also during COVID. I think it was a big kind of tailwind for some of these people because they had the logistics, etc. But coming back to something which is what I would say, because you and I are also techies in some ways. I'm sure you still code. So let's look at the horizontal tech trends. I mean, what are some of the audacious, you mentioned quantum computing, we'll come back to it in a while, but any kind of audacious things in the tech space?
One of the things we have bet on from the beginning of COVID is application of AI on vision. If you look at even today, there is a lot more AI application on data and a lot less on vision. And I think, just think about it, if the power of AI can be used on, when I say vision, it could be photographs, it could be images, it could be streaming video, it could be any one of the stuff. I think it's extremely powerful, and I think we have only scratched the surface. I think two of our investments are actually based on this space, broad space.
So could you talk a little bit more about both those investments?
Yeah, I'll come to that.
Sure.
So that's one area that we continue to bet on. We still believe there are a lot more opportunities in this space, and deep opportunities. I'm not talking of face recognition and those kind of stuff. I think much deeper than that. The second is, and it was gratifying yesterday when we met some startups, it's on analytics. Everybody has realized, everybody has tools, every enterprise has tools. They collect tons of data. They tried data lake, they tried Snowflake, everything else was tried. But I think even today, I remember a joke that used to happen when you were in Mindtree. I'm talking 2008 days, and I think the problem is still not solved. When 2008 financial crisis happened, KK, who was the CEO of Mindtree at the time, asked, a small exec team was sitting there. He asked, saying that, if dollar falls against the rupee and pound falls against and the dollar, the exchange rate fluctuates, what will happen to our top line and what will happen to our bottom line in dollar terms? Now, all the data to answer this exists in systems. But the fact of the matter is the finance team took 1 week to come back with an answer. And that by the time 1 week, the data is also already dated. So the point I'm trying to make is actually to be able to make sense of all data which is lying within the organization. And an ability to be able to, I'm not saying real time, we don't need real time data, but near real time on a day basis or a half a day basis. I think, and to be able to put it all together and extract it and make it available for use in an easy manner by different stakeholders in the organization, I think is still not a clearly solved problem.
True.
So things like that we are betting on. Cyber security will always remain a fresh area because it's a police thief. By the time you become better, the thief become better than the police. So it's a catch-up game all the time. Right. So I think it'll always be a hot area, so to say, as far as VC investments are concerned. But at the same time, if you look at it from an enterprise point of view, there are only certain things will work and certain things will not work.
True. So actually, coming back to those two investments in Vision. Can you, no, if it's kind of sensitive,
No, there's nothing sensitive. We have invested in it, it's public. So one of the companies we have invested in is a company called Infilect. The Infilect name stands for Infinite Intellect. What they do is actually they solve a retail execution problem for brand managers. So let's take a brand manager. Let's say I'm Britannia's brand manager. I make a different kind of cookies or biscuits. And what I do is actually, if I go to a small store format shops, actually Britannia brand manager pays the shopkeeper to get shelf space, right? It may be a 2 feet by 2 feet shelf space with the intention that at a high level, my products should be stocked. Now, which has been going on for donkey's years. The audit for that, from two angles. One, am I getting the space that I paid for? And second, are the products rightly displayed there? Is a very laborious process today. So there is some guy who goes and takes pictures, which is a third-party guy, and then he uploads this picture. 1 month later, the brand manager gets to know what was the brand plan, and vis-a-vis the brand plan, how was the product stocked. This is the problem they're trying to solve. Now, what is the complexity on that? The complexity on this, you should take a camera, and I should quickly recognize all my Britannia products. Every shape and form, light conditions, everything else, right? Because you're not putting any cameras there. No retailer will allow you. Original plan was that people will put cameras in retail shops and stuff like that. Doesn't work, right? So what these guys do is they instantly capture an image. The brand manager instantly gets a message saying that, first of all, from an audit point of view, are you getting the space that you paid for? And secondly, is the display of product as per your brand plan, right? That is what they're doing. And this is a global problem. This is not an India-specific problem. It's a global problem because every brand guy all over the world, Procter & Gamble onwards, everybody faces this.
So we'll make it a little interactive. Which one of your analysts found this?
Prachi. She was working online at the time.
Come on.
But she was involved in this process. And
okay, now you'll have to explain. I mean, he's actually described it. You go and take an image. Now, how is the image enhanced? Is it transported, enhanced on the cloud? And the feedback given for taking one more image and then enhance some more and features occluded? Can you?
I'll try my best to do it.
Yeah.
So what happens is when you take an image, the image goes to the cloud. It's processed real time. When I say real time, 2 to 5 minutes, the brand manager is at the store. He sees a dashboard with analytics. Analytics could be like share of shelf, proper, competition, what are you tagged across, those kind of analytics he can take, and he can take real-time actions on that after seeing this, what are the next inputs I have to do. What happened earlier was you take the written inputs, but the actioning on that was never taken because you have to go back and do that. So I think, yeah.
So this is interesting. All of you figure out how tech is helping out here. And what's more important is when you go back to Vision, That's where essentially image processing becomes very critical in terms of feature occlusion or pulling out the appropriate features with basically a map of each store in terms of layout. And then you get your answers. And then you click, and the person who's there taking the photograph is able to adjust it, do another click, tick off.
Yes.
So brilliant. So what is it solved? It's solved 1 month of delay, for sure. And it'll improve your forecasting also in terms of demand.
It also improves stockouts, for
Thank
example.
you.
Thanks, Prachi. It also improves stockouts. One of the biggest challenges is I go for a particular type of biscuit, it's not there. And if it's going to take 1 month later, no customer is going to wait for 1 month. He'll go somewhere else and buy it. So it helps the retailer store guy as well as the brand guy.
Yeah, so it's brilliant. So this is one real practical example where, as you said, vision, this is going to be the future, because image recognition in terms of how do you compute images, pull out stuff, is not only useful in this context, but more and more complex images will come out, whether it's through satellites. So, for example, we have a company called Dhruva here. I've been mentoring basically low orbit satellites. They can actually take much, much better pictures and figure out what's happening. But these are macro trends, but they have micro situations where things get built up over time, at least climate tech and things like that. What's the second vision thing?
Yeah, the second vision, it's actually, if I say vision is only one part of it. It's actually a drone company.
Okay.
But this drone company, we have invested in this company called General Aeronautics. So they make these medium-sized drones. The classification-wise, medium-sized drones. They are big. So they have a payload capacity of between 15 to 20 kgs. They're primarily used for agricultural spraying. The technology is not in the drone. Drone, a lot of people can make today. The technology is in the nozzle. Now you'll be wondering, where is vision coming in? Spraying is actually the first part. Precision agriculture is the next part. That means, can I, as I fly the drone on a large acre field, can I identify those areas which are infected, either with weeds or with pests, and only spray those areas? Now, this is where vision comes in. Can you, flying at 2-3 meters per second, can you capture at the right angles the image of the crop and process it? And you don't have to process real time, because by the time you finish and come back, as long as you process and identify the zones, then that data gets fed onto the drone which actually sprays. It will only go and spray there. Now, precision agriculture is extremely important for us. Because, right now, what's happening is one pest comes, one plant, we bloody spray the whole acres of prod, which is not good for all of us, we all know that. But it's extremely complex. But the starting point for that is actually capturing that image at a fairly high accuracy and using that image to find out whether this is a pest or not. Now, this can go to more extreme lengths as well. For example, in Western world, in the US especially, where the land holdings are very large, very, very large, they can't use drones because drones have a battery and you can't fly beyond a point. So they use actually tractor-based or actually fixed-wing aircrafts, right? So in which case, if you look at tractor as an example, then AI and vision have to be on the edge, on the tractor, because it's not going to make 2 rounds. As it's making the round itself, you have to recognize, you have to process it and spray if required. So I think both AI and the edge, which is a very, very relative new area the three of us have been discussing for some time now, I think we'll catch up a lot because these kind of use cases will come in. And coming back to the vision part, vision will become extremely important for most of these cases.
So here's one slightly counter theory which is additive to what you're saying, because I love bowling a googly once in a while. So in my mind, actually, equally important would be audio. And here are 2 companies which you should take a look at because they're coming up for the next round. I'm not plugging for them. One company is called Infinite Uptime. How many of you have heard of Infinite Uptime? Uptime. So what they do is they basically have AI edge processors with FFTs, right, in a manufacturing facility, and any kind of rotary component failure based on vibrations, they actually are able to capture and actually intervene real time. saying that this is going to fail because typically a ball bearing, a simple ball bearing can cause a downtime of 30%, which is huge. Now, this is another company called Dozy, which you might have heard of. So the first one is IIT Madras, the second one is IIT Bombay, guys. This is non-invasive ICU patient monitoring. So today, how do you do it? You put something here, you put something here, and you're seeing it on. So what these guys do is they have a very flat device, which is again got a processor, goes under the mattress, and only uses vibrations to pick out all the vitals. So the world is really changing because the way I look at it is all sensory perceptions that we can feel will be important. Vision is one, audio is one, smell, taste will come in with AR, VR. So there are two companies here, Partha, you should take a look at. One is called Marut Drones, and there's another one called Blue Jay, right here. At some point in time, if you just meet them, slightly larger. And then, of course, from this car you're talking about, or tractor, you should meet Professor Krishna of IIIT Hyderabad. He's got this lovely car with an edge processor which goes from here to point A to point B and says, these are all the potholes, these are all the issues. It's all real-time captures and actually sends it back. Of course, the action is, of course, much slower because even if you send it immediately to the government official, it'll still take 1 month. So that's a different thing, unlike a brand manager who'll say, yes, I'll do it. But it's there. So I would really urge you to kind of just meet these startups. Mansi, you can actually help with that. Now let's go back to something which is near and dear to your heart, and it's something which is very, very important. Most of you seem to be in your 30s and 40s with a few exceptions here. One thing being an entrepreneur is you have to take care of your health and mental health. And that's something which Partha has been doing for the last 5-7 years more. So talk us through that. I mean, being an entrepreneur is a tough job, but talk us through that a little bit.
I think we underestimate the importance of health. First of all, I'm not even talking about entrepreneurs, for everybody. And we all know entrepreneurs have the toughest job in the world. We all know that. It's a lonely journey, it's a tough journey. And the funny thing about health, and all of us know this very well, is that we don't realize the importance of it till the time we lose it. And it's not rocket science, everybody knows it. All of us are given WhatsApp messages by everybody saying, ye karo, wo karo, wo karo, but we don't do it. And the reason why I took it upon very seriously way back was, if you want to really function effectively as whatever role that you're doing, physically, balanced health is so important. You need the energy, right? It's a tiring job. There's no other way to do it. And you have to keep yourself fit. Otherwise, your physical, your energy level drains, and as the energy level drains, your cognitive abilities drain, and then your decision-making abilities become questionable, and you'll take wrong decisions. And this you have to do it day in and day out, right? And it's a tough job. So, I think we owe it to ourselves. And I'm not saying everybody should take up marathon running and that's the only way to keep yourself healthy. So that's one part of it. We'll have to figure out what works for you. We underestimate the power of walking. All it takes is 30 minutes or 35 minutes of walking every day. We completely underestimate it. But there's another angle to it, which I've been doing a lot of research, and I should qualify this by saying I'm not an expert. I'm not a expert who has studied this, but based on just studying things and applying it myself. People confuse health and fitness. And health and fitness are two different things. Health is a superset. Fitness is one part of it. And I personally believe for somebody to be healthy, there are 4 things that are required. There are 4 sub-items on that. One is actually physically being fit. And you can do whatever to play. You can play a game, you can have a sport, or walk or run, do whatever is required to be fit. That's one part of it. Second, actually, eat right. I think all our problem starts with that, right? So the second is eat right. The third, again, off late, there's been a lot of articles written about it, the importance of getting good sleep. We completely underestimated it. And corporate executives also promoted this. There's a macho thing. I only sleep 4 hours a day. bullshit. Yeah. If you're doing 4 hours a day, you're doing a disservice to everybody. Right? I think having that, I'm not here votary of saying you need to get so many hours of sleep. That you will have to find out what works for you. For somebody, 6 hours will work, but general data shows it should be 7 hours or above. So the third is actually good sleep. And the fourth, and again, this is a more recent thing, is to have a positive outlook in your mind. Positive frame of mind, positive way of looking at things. I don't like to use the word mental wellness to it because it has in the Indian context, it has a very negative connotation. But having a positive frame of mind in terms of everything that you do. You get up in the morning and you should feel, you know what? I'm gifted. I'm here. I'm alive. I'm kicking. I have a job to do. I have a family to be with. That positive frame of mind. And the reason why I'm saying is actually generally, and I'll tell you multiple stories about IT services companies if you want, is that we were talking, we generally criticize. Ye kya hai, bekar hai, job hai, kya manager hai. So we like to always point out things that are very, and if you do that, actually it's going to affect your health. And I'll give you 2 examples. Stories I can tell, right?
Absolutely. That's why we are here.
So first story, and both are real stories. Have you seen a school bus? At least in the olden days, when lots of kids were going in a school bus. How will it be? It's fun. It's, people are throwing pencils and paper at each other. They're shouting and singing and dancing. That's how people go to a school. To me, that's a positive frame of mind. You are in a joyous frame of mind. Have you seen an IT services company bus? Guy is upset, guy or girl who is upset, probably didn't get breakfast at home, got fired by somebody. And that's the frame of mind in which you go to office. So you just imagine what you'll produce. Right? So, but I'll tell you the second more important and more interesting story is that I used to have this charter of saying everybody who joins Mindtree in small groups of people I will meet, including experienced people. So when experienced people meet, so let's say 30 of us joined last week. So I meet 30 of them. In a small room like this, we'll meet. We'll talk about everything, Mindtree vision, goals, blah, blah, customer, their roles, everything. Somehow the conversation will come down to salary. Without salary, you cannot have an open house, right? So it will come down to, so then I will say, are you guys willing to listen to do a test? So the first question I will ask, these are all IT professionals, mid-career guys, experienced people. So keep that in the context. I'll ask the first question saying, do you think you are in the top 10% in the country in terms of education? Simple question. You know the country, you know the population, you know your background. Are you in the top 10% in the country in terms of educational background? What do you think? What about this room? Do you think you are in the top 10% in the country in terms of education?
Yes.
Loud, yes, it has to be.
Yes.
Right? So there'll be a small debate, somebody will say no, then somebody will counter argument. Finally, everybody will agree, yeah. Why top 10%? We are probably in the top 5%. So that's settled. The second question I'll ask is, do you think you are in the top 20% among salaried employees in terms of what salary you get? Carefully listen to it. Are you in the top 20% among salaried employees in terms of what salary you get? The reason why I say salaried employees, now you can't say I compare myself with Adani or Ambani. You decided to take a job, right? So then you can compare yourself only with salaried employees. Again, there will be massive debate. Slowly 2 groups will get formed. And finally the group will settle, yeah, we are in the top 20% of the country among salaried employees.
You can ask them the same question.
Same question. No, here there are more entrepreneurs, so I can't ask that question. But what do you think? I mean, if you take IT services employees, are you in the top 20% in the country? Right? Absolutely yes. You can have enough data to analytics we can do on the data. Then I ask that question, but don't you think more than 80% of the people in IT services companies are unhappy? They are unhappy. Now, the reason for that is manifold. We can get into that and have a separate conversation. But sometimes we think, we are not happy with what we have. It's good to be aspirational and aspire for something more. But you have to be contented with what you have. In running, when you do long distance running, one of the things the coach tells you is you'll get very frustrated when somebody, especially who's elder to you, who overtakes you in the last mile of a marathon. You'll get very, 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 very frustrated. But he says at that time, just look back and see how many people are behind you. That will give you the motivation to go forward. So all this points to a positive frame of mind. We need to be having a positive frame of mind in terms of thinking that, this is good for me, this is great. Right? Of course, I want to aspire for more, but this is great. And that positive frame of mind is one of the 4 important aspects of being a healthy person. I know, long answer, sorry for it, but...
I think it's a very important thing. As entrepreneurs, I will actually endorse that, because my first entrepreneurial journey, which was in the Bay Area, heydays, I didn't even know what a VC meant. But I think the first bunch of people I hired were always can-do attitude. It's not as though we didn't make mistakes, it's not as though we didn't have arguments and all that, but the ship kept on moving. There were companies around us who suddenly got buzzed and got VC funded, and we'll say, hey, those guys don't even have this, but they've got funding. But there was always a refactoring, in the sense, go back, reflect, as he said, look back. We started with nothing. Actually, we started the company in recession. We got all the service cheap. There's so many benefits we had, right? So eventually we caught up, because that taught us financial discipline, how to kind of make money last and build basically a profitable business and getting the customers. Then the VC funding and valuations all kind of at least started to make sense. Other people were a little luckier. Maybe they had done a startup before with the investors, because in those days it was a very small group of people. So again, don't get disheartened looking at what's happening around you. If you're onto something good, stay on the course, be positive, look back, as he said, it's very, very meaningful. You will make mistakes, but that shouldn't bring you down. And then instill the same thing in your team. That's what your company culture is, in a nutshell. And health is important. He's pointed out four factors, and all of them are very critical. So constant reminders. I think in this building itself, thanks to MSR and a whole bunch of things, we have a startup which is called Extra Living, right? So they are into all kinds of cool stuff, and then there are food tech companies which are into, called Millet Bowl, which is all natural stuff. There's a vending machine here where we'll get you pure, you should get him a pure sugarcane juice. Okay, he might need it. But it's happening. I think people are becoming more aware. Technology is there. Now, if I were to ask you, I mean, there's some crazy questions that a whole bunch of people prepared. So they'll get pissed off if I don't ask a few of them. So there's one, which is like all these questions which I always see on. Okay, here. I'll try to kind of, how to take a next step in becoming a unicorn.
If there is one word I hate in the VC industry, is unicorn. Now, I mean, sorry, I'll be very open and blunt. I don't like the word unicorn. I don't like the word unicorn because I think a startup's entrepreneur's job is not to build a highly valued company. Is to build a sustainable company which can generate revenues and profits. I mean, if you are a capitalist, and we are all capitalists, that's why we are in this room, is that the job of a capitalist is to create value, get paid for it, and get profits and give it back to shareholders. So I think this unicorn is a very, very false way of identifying who is a more valued company. So I don't like it. I think focus on building a valued company and valuation will follow. It's like, when you were kids, I'm sure some of you would have heard from your mother, right? Go to Saraswati, Lakshmi will follow. So the same story. So I don't want to give steps to become a unicorn. I am willing to give steps to become a more valued company.
So as a corollary to it, I think you should understand what a unicorn means. It means how it was valued at the last round of funding period. It does not indicate company health in most cases, unless you're a public company, especially in the private thing. So going back to Partha's point, as a VC, we are just fund managers. So what happens is we have to generate returns. It's not even our money, as opposed to when I'm an angel investor, I can last, right? So a VC's lens is slightly different because it's a fund manager's lens. But a company shouldn't kind of start patting itself in the back. I raised $100 million and I've reached a unicorn valuation, because it's meaningless unless the company has positive metrics, as he actually pointed out. So thank you for that very precise answer. There's another interesting thing, latest trend. What is your take on ChatGPT?
It's interesting. We live in interesting times. It's a generic answer I'll give. But I think many years back, when we were in Mindtree, when we were betting on artificial intelligence in general, we instituted a chair in Stanford on eliminating bias in AI models. That was we had identified a professor to do that. So we had a chance meeting with Andrew NG at the time. So he spent about an hour with us. This, I think, was 2017 or 18, around that time. He told us a very important thing at the time, and that's playing out. And I'll come back and link that answer back to ChatGPT. He said there are very few companies in the world who will build real AI models. Very, very few, because it requires deep pockets, deep expertise. And there's a very deadly combination, right? You need deep pockets and deep expertise is a deadly combination. Of course, they are linked. If you don't have deep pockets, you can't get deep expertise. So there'll be a few companies. He said handful. He said, I'll be surprised if there are 5. But he says, what everybody else needs to know is what exists in these models and how can I use that model or that AI piece, whatever you want to call it as, to be able to solve real use cases. And of course, he was telling that in the context of Mindtree as an IT services company. He said, you guys should train your people to say, these are all the AI technologies that are available from the ABCD companies. You know the customer's use case best. Your team should be the bridge to say, I'll use this algorithm for this use case. It's almost saying, I am like a system integrator kind of guy and not a software developer. Right? And I think that is very, very true. ChatGPT, I still think it's in very early stages. It does a lot of hallucinations. We have all seen that. But the point is not that. The point is that these kind of models will evolve, will come. But I think our charter is to say, how can I use it to solve a real use case? Right now what's happening is it's a fun place. You do.
That's what exactly I want to tell. Maybe from THub itself there will be an answer. India's answer to ChatGPT. That is Adamax.
So you should actually introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Venkat. I'm from Adam State. I'm very happy to be blessed here today. He's talking about 1 year senior, and I'm 1 year senior to you in terms of age, right? But I'm the youngest entrepreneur, so started new life along with my son, right? So ChatGPT, yes, generally sometimes the buzzwords will catch the attention of the people so quickly. But as you rightly said, how many use cases it is going to solve for ChatGPT, or even very quickly launched Google's Bard. I mean, it's a lot of minus points. It will not address at least whatever the use cases which we have identified. That is about 250 use cases we have identified. It's not even 5 those 2 products are giving today. In fact, today I'm going to post in LinkedIn in the evening what exactly Adamax in compared to so many, without mentioning the ChatGPT. I'm going to simply say GBT. As you rightly said, the models, you need to have a lot of expertise to create, and you have to visualize, you have to understand with the people what sort of use cases a model is going to solve and address. That is what exactly ChatGPT should do. And for them, they are in a fancy world now. I don't think enough R&D will take place until unless Microsoft is going to do something for them. So ChatGPT is not the beginning. ChatGPT is not the end of the world. That's what I want to say.
All right. So actually, in an orthogonal point, Partha, what we are doing is we are taking the Atal Innovation Grant for AI and machine learning. We are going to bootstrap a data infrastructure here. We are actually going to kind of run a whole bunch of GPT answers and curate that and make it very specific and simple for certain applications. Now, the real research behind it can be thrown off to IIIT. So these will be all linked labs. So that is basically our vision, and we'd love for you to participate, and also Mindtree. I'm going to tell HCL, Cognizant, everyone to come in and actually help with that. So I think MSR is here, the timing is perfect. So I was just talking to him, MSR, I should introduce you also in front of the TV. Just come here. So please welcome MSR. He's our new CEO of THub, or existing CEO of THub. I always say new, but because I'm used to Ravi. And COVID actually fogged my mind, okay? So he's been around for 2 years doing some immense work. With the AI, which is Atal Innovation Center grant, as well as the DST grant, as I was telling them, we want to actually build a digital infrastructure for the startups, not only to just do basic hosting, but any kind of experiments that you want to do with generative AI and traditional AI machine learning models that we can get from Andrew or whoever else, whether it's Stanford, whether it's MIT or IITs here, and actually build. So for that, we actually need both the industry as well as venture capitalists, as well as entrepreneurs and researchers, right? And Hyderabad has all of that. And I think THub is an excellent kind of forum. I have to kind of adjust my chair here. So that is basically already happening to some extent, and we'd like more and more people to participate, because this grant is a multi-year grant and we can actually apply for more if we can show some results in terms of how people are using stuff. So I'm a little bit more positive than Venkat, because unfortunately I did my PhD in AI and I did it in machine learning in 1988. And if you look at where the world is today, I'm very happy. Other people may not be happy, but now that model is available to everyone.
Yeah, just to show, the long gestation periods of AI. When I joined Wipro, 1 year after I joined Wipro in late 1985, my manager told me, the next big thing is going to be artificial intelligence. Go do a course in Indian Institute of Science. So Indian Institute of Science used to run courses at the time called proficiency courses for working professionals. So it is an evening course, some 6-month course. So I went and attended that 6-month course, proficiency course in artificial intelligence. And everybody told, next year onwards, AI is going to take over, software jobs are not required. No software engineers will get a job. And we are still waiting for the day. But I think the way I also look at it is actually, to be fair, ChatGPT, not in its existing form, in some better form, will kill certain businesses. There's no running away from that. Now, while I don't think we need to look at ChatGPT as a competition, we need to look at ChatGPT kind of thing as an ally and say, using that, what can I build more?
So that is a very important point. Like, for example, how many of you are HDFC customers? Very few, okay? So you'll get a thing saying that, do your KYC. So you'll go, click on the link. It'll say, please enter your phone number to do you'll get an OTP, and then, so they've already linked to basically online KYC services. But what if the online KYC services has an old phone number of yours? So the interesting thing is you keep getting SMSs, but you can't enable the online because it won't send you the OTP. Now these kind of things, even though we are digital, can all be avoided, because if you look at information flows and all, it's not that super difficult. But we haven't reached that. If you look at, like, you've heard of Hyperverge. Hyperverge is another company which is trying to break all these links so that you can, if the wrong, like for example, if ChatGPT was there as an agent, it could have, it's not there today, it's just random, but it could have asked, this could be a problem, do you want to report your new phone number along with your Aadhaar as a quick verification? Click it, it's gone, both sides get fixed, you get a notification, everyone's happy. The next link is, if this doesn't work, please show up at the nearest branch. At the nearest branch, there's utter confusion, right? No one knows who you are and things like that. If you just go in to check yourself, if again an interface like ChatGPT helped, you would eliminate a lot of time and waste. So there are practical uses today, but as Venkat was pointing out, it will take time, there is latency, and there's a high degree of patience. Now, the other thing what I wanted to ask was, you were very impressed with T-Works. And we all know hardware, software, everything is going to come together for the next generation solution. What is your vision for these kind of maker labs, working with research institutions? Because there's always a gap. I'm just talking about it from an IIT Madras research park perspective. What is your impression vis-a-vis IISc and...
I don't know whether I have an answer to what is the vision between an organization like T-Works and research institutions. What I'm more fascinated about, the opportunity for entrepreneurs to work with T-Works. That's where it's a very fascinating visit, Ms. Arun.
Yeah, so-
I know it's a very short 20-minute visit,
Yeah.
but the reason why I'm saying that is actually twofold. One is actually, as Mela Ventures, we have been working on this thesis that the next round of startup funding, startup opportunities, in the next couple of years, I'm not talking of immediate stuff, is going to be product companies which make hardware, software products. I think that wave will happen. Just as the way many years back the SaaS wave started and enterprise wave started, I think the next wave will be a hardware, software product companies. And already you are seeing many of them coming up. For them to be successful, the VCs today are very scared of touching any hardware, software company. I'll be the first to admit. Because, doing production in India is a very, very painful process. Some of you have been involved in, there are supply chain issues, there are labor issues, there are whole lot of regulatory issues and stuff like that. So that's the reason why VCs stay away from it. But I think that will change. At the end of the day, VCs are, they're like a herd. Somebody goes in the direction and sees success, everybody will follow. But we are betting on the fact that hardware, software, we have the talent, we have the ideas. So I think that this is bound to happen. But for them to be successful, multiple things need to fall in place. And the starting point is a prototyping lab. If you do not have a prototyping lab by which you can conveniently access and try out multiple things, the barrier becomes higher because the cost becomes higher, the time duration becomes higher. It's a very frustrating journey during that period. So to that extent, whatever little I saw, and I understand only 20% of the equipment is in place, but when a fully functional prototyping lab, I call it as prototyping lab because people can come and prototype here, I think is a starting point. Of course, supply chains have to fall in place. Of course, ease of manufacturing or even third-party manufacturing, even at low volumes, have to fall in place. But I think all that will happen. But this is a very capital-intensive stuff. So only government can do it. Nobody else will be able to do this. Even academic institutions will struggle to do it. So to that extent, what you have done is extremely powerful. We were talking about it after visiting and understanding the business models. The business models will evolve. I don't think, my only suggestion to the team who is doing this, don't be fixated on the business model. I think allow that business model to evolve over time. And then that will naturally settle down in a business model which is viable for the organization as well as for the entrepreneurs.
So this is very interesting. If you look at the Hyderabad ecosystem, and MSR can collaborate or corroborate on that, and you can, there's a very, very good band of MSMEs which are in traditional manufacturing spaces, but they're going to die, okay, for a variety of reasons, because everything is going to go digital, everything is going to go fast. So our vision was basically to kind of open them up in terms of partnering with startups to be the manufacturing base and take a stake. That is one side. The second thing is, if you look at the labs itself, like Triple IT, Hyderabad, IIT, etc., they have good profs, but they're not very hands-on for a variety of reasons. They're very good and very small, kind of limited. So we are expanding the labs there, and this will be the natural evolution. And the people who are bridging the gap are the OEMs, real product guys who are giving their products here for manufacturing. So a good example would be Twasta. You've heard of Twasta? Twasta is a base. You've not heard of Twasta? What about your analysts? Who's the other person who there? You have only one here today? Suhani, you haven't heard of Twasta? So Twasta is almost the first 3D manufacturer of equipment for buildings. So this equipment that they make out of IIT Madras, which was a prototype, has come out, and now they're building buildings. It's a very, very cool thing. So if you have a low-cost project, etc., they were able to actually get a plan and build everything with just this machine. So we're trying to get that machine here. So of course we can never get MSR's time because he's super busy, but we'll get him here. So you can actually see that happening. Now imagine what can happen. Remember when all these next generation German machines came to lay out roads, and we could do, I mean, from our days in the 80s to lay a road, he will kind of confirm, would take about a year approximately, and you'll still get stuck. So now you can actually, you can build buildings. I mean, I'm not saying they can build a building like this, but you can definitely build a lot of buildings, especially they're doing with Godrej. Godrej has come in, L&T has come in, they've collaborated. It started off in a small lab, So I think I'm very confident that we will see this vision play out, and you rightfully say it has to evolve, the business model, because the greater good and the greater impact comes from something like that. So again, we want your support as much as possible, and please visit as many times. Now I'm going to open it up because we have already kind of reached the basic kind of a thing to the audience. So please put up your hand, ask Partha any questions.
So
And-
before that, right, there are 3 entrepreneurs on stage. All of them have turned into investors. So can we have a big round of applause? It's very, very rare to see 3 people on stage like this. Okay, and all of them are well-seasoned entrepreneurs. So please make sure you ask.
So
your
all of us are
questions.
angels. All of us have played different roles. Now he is shepherding the greater good of startups here. I'm just helping him out in whatever capacity I can. He will help out a lot more now, being a VC. I mean, so that he can come in and help us out also. So go ahead, but ask them more questions than I, because I'm supposed to be a moderator.
So, hi sir, thanks for coming here and sharing the wisdom with us. So my question is simple: how to generate more and more ideas, because one startup idea is not enough to build the whole company, because every day we have to generate more and more ideas in terms of business innovation and product innovation every day, right? And to handle the team and other issues, right? So as you have correctly said, a positive framework of mind and having a diversity in meeting people, those kind of things definitely can help. But apart from those, if you can share more things to generate ideas. Thanks.
Did you mean ideas from a startup idea?
Yeah. No, I mean, we are startup people, right? So in our daily life and general things.
I don't know. I don't know an easy way to find out more ideas, but I think
From your perspective, from your journey.
No, I was reminded of one conversation I had with somebody who said, the best ideas come from people who can connect the dots, right? I mean, we all heard that saying, right? Now, I was digging deeper. For you to connect the dots, you have to find the dots, right? That becomes, how curious you are. Every time you talk to somebody, and if you're curious enough, you'll ask the right kind of questions, and that's how you'll identify the dot, and that's why you can connect the dot and come up with ideas.
I'm going to answer you an exact kind of ideas, right? He's an agri-tech company called Segregate, right? Which basically is creating essentially an IoT-based kind of device for the farmers to segregate fruits in terms of defects and sizes. It could be apples, it could be anars or whatever, right? Oranges. And he's eliminating that whole thing from the mandi, which is very, very inefficient. So what are some of the ideas? One idea was what Partha sir was saying. Vision. I mean, can you kind of put something which can actually kind of figure out defects a lot more? Can you figure out what is basically the brand? Because there might be 40 different kinds of anar, okay? And people are selling it as one type of anar. This was just an idea, right? Can you make your machine kind of variable in terms of capacity? I mean, he's working in the small maker lab, which is the lab I was saying in Triple IT, not this big. This becomes a bigger lab. So can you bring that and make it bigger here? So that's what you wake up with. If you have 50 different ideas as an entrepreneur, then I would say, aipoindi. Okay.
I'll just add this.
See if your mic is on.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Hitendra, I'll just, so few things, right? One is also, so innovation can be very many ways. It can be process innovation, it can be product innovation, it can be service innovation, it can also be experience. So I'll give you an example. So think about Apple, right? What have they done? They've created a family of devices, and what really powers all of them is software, that whole ecosystem. Similarly, you think of, let's take many years ago, most of you may not have been born at that time, but Xerox, for example, right? Pay as you go, what we now call SaaS, right? Right? That was an innovation. Similarly, let's take another example. Today, how many of you here have cars or two-wheelers? Everyone. How many times have you read the user manual? No, right? So a startup can create an AR VR experience, right? So think about it not just from many times we tend to confuse innovation with building a better product. Okay, what I call the better mousetrap theory, if you will. But there can be different types of innovation.
So even in Segritech, like, how do you get it to the Mandi guys? Have you thought of an innovative financing model? Have you thought of a shared services model, as MSR was talking about? So he gives Xerox as an example. The very oldest thing is basically the mainframe. Mainframe was also timeshare, right? Even before people knew what MVS was or what COBOL was. How many people program in COBOL still? Oh, cool. Venkat does C++. He's COBOL, which is good. So basically, the mainframe was very expensive. So if your product is very expensive, but it's useful, can you do a shared services model, which makes sense? And it is absolutely possible because one mandi, many farmers can come and use it. Right? So I think there are ideas every day, but like if you have diverse ideas, that is today I'm doing this, tomorrow I want to do this, that becomes tough. That's what I said. If you have 50 different things in your mind, it doesn't work. Anyone else?
One last thing, Hitendra. Talk to your customers. They will give you ideas.
That's absolutely true. Thank you.
So thank you, Partha sir and Dr. Srikanth, for this very open conversation. You mentioned your investment.
You should introduce yourself, please.
Okay, my name is Bharti, and I work with climate tech startups in raising capital. You mentioned about your thesis around investing in hardware cum software companies. So could you elaborate on that, and what kind of companies are you looking at or open to evaluate?
So he is an honored guest. Let him start, and then.
Yeah, both of you, please.
No, I don't think we have reached a stage where we can say within hardware, software companies what to. We are still, like I said, we are forming a thesis and we are betting on the fact we have not completed our study as of now. But our thinking is the next wave will be product companies. When you say product, I mean they are solving some problem or attempting to solve a problem in a combination of hardware and software. Right? Compared to right now, most of the companies that we are invested in, actually only software it is, pure software. That's all I mean. But within that, have we segregated in terms of what kind of hardware, software companies? We have not done that yet. So I don't have a clear-cut answer to your question, but hopefully we'll have an answer to your question in the next 3-4 months.
No, maybe you could take us through TESOL, how you evaluated it and how you...
TESOL was very clear, because TESOL was first of all, I think TESOL was incubated in IIT Bombay. And they used a concept, it's PCM, right?
Yes, yeah.
PCM, right? They used PCM and a particular combination of PCM by which the energy that is used to chill that PCM serves that chillness for a longer period of time. It's all about the combination of what that PCM is. So that is the technology behind it. But the use case for us was different. The use case for us is cold chain is very poor in our country, number one. Number two is actually lot of large MNCs will start putting pressure on the existing cold chain not to use traditional ice because they are bad for the environment. Right? They will want a better cooling technology which is a little more softer on the environment, and that's where PCM technology comes in. So that's the thesis, the combination of both climate tech as well as the technology behind it.
Sorry, I think we will be running out of time because he's in great demand, but I'll answer one question for you, okay? Specifically one example. You have sensors today. You have essentially air quality index sensors, and you put it all over the city. Can you have a peer-to-peer exchange mechanism where very dynamically you get data which says, today, please do not take the car out, or please avoid this place, or today the AQI is such that if you're an asthma patient. So all of this is actually being done by a bunch of things. So it will also come. Then this whole notion of, as Partha was mentioning, traditional methods, even like say farming, you're saying, right? Precision agriculture. Today it's approximate tadal agriculture, right? You put it, something will come up. But you're actually damaging a whole bunch of things, right? So precision, here itself is a combination of software and hardware. So that is what will affect our lives. So start thinking that way. Because certain things will become very, very easily available. Complex sensors will become cheaper and cheaper. Processors are anyway becoming cheaper and cheaper. So what is going to be done, what can be done on the edge, what can be done in the cloud is basically how you look at it. And that's where the models come in. Models are also being evolved and it's available for a lot of people, open source. So think that way. That's the best way of actually. And by the way, you're in super demand because they're saying that you should be like Lord Vishnu in 2 places. At 4:30, you're supposed to materialize in Triple IT Hyderabad. So I don't know what time it is now. That'll be tough. Yeah, please. That's right. See, but Mansi, you have to make sure that Lord Ramesh receives Lord Vishnu in, 30 minutes.
So hi, my name is Varyavardhan. I have a small question.
So you have to speak loudly and then introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, my name is Varyavardhan. I have a small question on the VC side. So I was going through a bunch of profiles on many of the VC firms, and I was not exactly able to figure out what do VC firms look for when they looking to hire analysts or people who sort of gets inside the VC ecosystem.
The answer is in front of you. Just ask them. They're.
Suhani and
One of you answer.
Prachi.
One of you answer.
Suhani and Prachi are from our analysts at Mela. So you can ask them. They'll give you first-hand update.
What did we look for in you?
No, so I think curiosity is one of the biggest requirements to be in a investing domain.
Speak up.
So curiosity is a very big.
Actually, you should come here because then you'll get recorded.
No, so it's
also.
okay. I will. Oh, that's no.
Recording.
So since VC will involve meeting lot of people and doing lot of different things, like every founder will be coming up with a new business, new idea. So it will be very important for you as a listener and an analyzer to understand, and it's like a connector dot kind of a thing. So you will be listening to a lot of people, lot of times. You have to be curious enough to maybe go deeper in few areas which you think are interesting, and eventually over a period of time you might have your own thesis and opinion. So 2 things which are very important is curiosity, and the second is also the ability to have an opinion. You cannot be neutral. You need to like something, not like something, because you have to be decisive. So I think these are the 2 things, and as in obviously you will have your basic requirements of ability to understand a business, which involves financial analysis and those basic things. I'm talking about the softer skills which would be required.
Right. So there is something called attached but detached, which the Gita also teaches you. So never fall in love with the first startup you meet.
So you have to be on the second startup to go there.
No, not second. It might be nth.
Last question.
Yeah. Hello, sir. My name is Sritesh. We are building an EPR and ERP solution. What basically SAP does to tech industry, we are trying to do for the alcohol industry, clubbing and pubbing. So where will be EBITDA positive from month 1 itself. But how do I convince a VC or an angel investor to not invest more and take more stake? Like
No. So you said you're building an ERP for the alcohol industry?
Yeah, ERP and EMP, performance management as well.
Okay. So first of all, if you're building ERP, because it doesn't have an ERP, build an ERP before you do PF, right? Because that's next. Because unless you collect data, you can't do anything, right?
Yeah, that is why. We are already in the pipeline of ERP, then EMP.
So don't talk about both together, because that actually is a no to a VC.
Okay.
What can you do first, practically? And what is the minimum traction you have since you're going to be profitable? Do you have 3 large alcohol customers today?
I have already 40 signed MOUs in biggest.
Very good. So then why are you afraid? Come talk to us.
Okay, sir. I'll get in touch with you. Thank you, sir.
Last question.
Hello, sir. Just a brief background. In 2008, I was doing my MBA, and I asked my director that I want to do an internship in a place where I don't waste my time, because I had 3 years of experience. And he told me Mindtree Consulting. And that is how I started my second career post MBA. And it was really a great experience. Before coming to the question, I heard about the 4 pillars that you have talked about: movement, nutrition, sleep, and then positive mindset.
So he's the fitness company.
Yeah, so we have been working on those 4 pillars for almost 5.5 years now. Now, getting back to the question, you mentioned that the business model will evolve, and so we should be open to look at evolving business model. So when you evaluate a startup, I think the first thing that most of the folks have been asking us about is about the business model. So when you're open for the business model to evolve, then how important is the initial business model which is pitched to the VCs?
Great question. It's extremely important. By the way, I just told the business model evolve in the context of T-Works, not in a generic context, but even assume that there are many businesses that we evaluate, many startups, where we think the business model evolve, but still the business model that you present in the beginning to us is extremely important, because that shows your conviction. Of course, the reason why we think it will evolve is because your conviction will be based on 2 things. One, this is what you think want to happen. It's more a want, you want it to happen, not necessarily it will happen. And second, it will be based on 2 or 3 customers you have spoken to, right? But that is the reason why we always tell startup founders that you have to be flexible for it to evolve. Why will it evolve? Because as you talk to more and more customers, you will start understanding more nuances in terms of the ability to pay, how they want to pay, when they will pay, and the pricing, what basis on which you decide pricing. That flexibility you need to have. But your starting point is important. Because if you don't have the conviction that you are convinced about it, then we probably won't even move to the making a statement to you saying that business model will evolve.
Any more question? We may have time for one more, and then I think he has to leave. He has to vanish.
Yeah. I'm Sharath. I'm the founder CEO of a company called Hiring Hood. We are actually building an acceleration platform for hiring. The question I have here is, before that, I want to say that I am a product of Wipro. I was with Wipro for 8 years. Actually, I joined during exactly the cusp of you guys leaving and Vivek Paul entering.
Is that a good thing or a... Is that a good thing or bad thing? I want to ask.
It obviously, in a way, it's bad for Wipro and good
so
for
Sharath, you're also part of the Wipro mafia, I was telling.
Thank you. But we always wish that maybe Premji would have retained all those people, would have made it much bigger, because there was a vision 4x4 and we missed it by an inch. We always felt that if that team would have been there, definitely would have achieved that. So my question is more towards, I was always ideating because I have a passion to become an entrepreneur from long back. So when we have ideas, when we take it to VCs or somewhere, they say, no, you need to build an MVP. So after we build an MVP, they say that, no, you go and do a product market fit. Post that, they'll say you need to generate some customers, you should get some customers and revenues. So initially I was trying on the ideation phase, but later I built a platform and all. Now we passed all those. Now we are having customers, recruitment vendors, we generate a revenue. But again, when we go to VCs, they say that we want some more revenues. So that's where the question comes.
I'll give you a more blunt answer.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
so basically, in a way, they are encouraging you to go on with life. Okay? So you evolved. And at some point in time, you have to make a discovery saying that this guy I keep talking to and he keeps saying that is not someone I need to talk to. Number one. Number two, I think you need to do some research. I mean, some amount of traction is very critical for us. I'll tell you why. Because we are a slightly later stage VC. If I'm a very early stage VC, it's slightly different. That's why we have platforms like THub and CIE and all, which can put in some amount of early stage funding. You have angels, you have angel network. But at some point in time, you do need some traction. Now, if the same person keeps saying, I need more traction, that's actually a negative sign, because they are still not convinced. Yeah, still. They are not the right people. Because if you've already, in your mind, shown traction, and you're very clear on amount you want to raise, then do a little bit of homework on the investors too. Don't blindly go and meet a lot of investors. I would say don't do that, because as an entrepreneur, even when I went for VC funding, which I didn't know existed, I was very specific about 3 or 4 conversations.
And initially they were all no's. But maybe in a year, 2, 3 of them out of the 4 were yes. So that's what. So make sure that you're focused.
My view is you're taking VCs too seriously. No, seriously, in the sense that a lot of VCs are very polite in giving you all this. I think you do this, baad mein dekhenge. Basically, they're saying no. And that's an honest answer. That's point number one. Point number two is actually, the VC ecosystem is fairly evolved in our country. At different stages, there are different types of VCs. In fact, that's why one of the things we are talking with Mansi and team is, I think we should organize a session if required. What stage you actually go to an institutional VC like us? At what stage you should go to an institutional VC like him? It's very different. But both of us are termed as VCs. Right? So, there will always be intersection. But I think the broad definitions you need to understand. When you are building a product, when you have an idea, you can't go to any investor. You have to go friends and family or put your own money. As simple as that. Right? Now, once you build something, maybe you can do angel investors with a little larger pool of friends and circle. Right? There you have to get 2-3 customers. Paying customers. Not LOIs, no MOUs, paying customers. Then you can come to an early stage investor like us. What is our definition of early stage? We leave out all the English and product market fit and all that stuff. We say you should have an idea and you should have more than one customers, and deliberately we say more than one customer because first customer for most product companies will be friends and family. Nothing wrong in it. We want you to sell to somebody whom you didn't know. And you made a pitch, you had a problem, and I sold it to the guy. So our definition of early stages, 2-3 customers, between $300,000 to $500,000 in revenue. That's our definition. Yeah, more than happy.
Immediately, just jump.
I'm not even talking of thesis because every VCs will have a thesis. If you come with a B2C product to me, I will not invest because Mela Ventures is a B2B investor. So, no, I'm just not specifically answering to you. So, point I'm trying to drive is study the VC website very clearly. Are they the kind of guy who will invest in a company like you? The problem is, and I'll be blunt here, startups don't do enough homework before they come to a VC. And the VC wants to be polite. Then he is finding out some excuse. He doesn't want to tell bluntly on your face. So he'll say, thoda karo, ye karo, baad mein dekhenge. Then you will do religiously that and you come back. Then he'll say, thoda karo. So my suggestion to you is actually select your VC carefully, study them what their thesis is. Do you fit into their thesis? Go to the right stage VC. And last but not the least, don't take them too seriously.
Correct. I think last point is very important, but also take it with a pinch of salt because if this answer is the same thing, it is an indication that the person is not interested or is not right for you, right? You can't go to the same person who has rejected you for marriage 4 times, no? I'm just kidding. Okay, I think we are done. Thank you very much, Partha, for making the trip all the way from Bangalore. Pleasure to host you. And please give him a big hand. He's going to disappear now.
Guys, can you please wait for a group photo, please, guys? Also, I'll request MSR to give a vote of thanks and a token of appreciation from our side to Partha and his team. Can we have Prachi and Suhani on stage as well? Thank you.
So very quickly, Partha, Suhani, and Prachi, thank you for coming and spending almost 2 full days. It's fine. 2 full days. And I hope you will not just fund our startups, but also do a lot more of these sessions. And also, I think one of the reasons I was pushing Partha for a while to come was also that, we need to get people who built, successful businesses, who are now running funds to come in and see what's happening here, right? Because seeing is believing, right? And hopefully you will become ambassadors for us in, in all the places you work with. Yeah. So thank you again for coming and thank you all for being here. Yeah. Thank you.